It is said that when Temujin was born, grasped in the infant's hand, he held a large blood clot. To the ancient Mongolians, this was a portent, a sign he would be a great warrior and leader. The lands of Mongolia are a harsh realm, one of the most formidable on earth. Within these lands lay a hardy people, forged by their country into great warriors, and above all else, survivors. Mongolia in the late 12th century was a land divided. For countless ages, the tribes of the steppe were kept that way, by both their own infighting, and also deliberately by those that feared them the most. To the south, the greatest empire of Asia was now ruled as a divided realm. China had long used its diplomatic might to keep the extremely dangerous northern tribes divided. They bribed them, manipulated them, and they did all they could to keep the northern threat in check. For centuries before and after, the Chinese people toiled on the Great Wall, a formidable barrier that they had used with mixed results to keep out those northern invaders. But all the walls in the world would not be enough to stop the tidal wave that was coming, one that would sweep away the old world in a savage current of murder and destruction unheard of in human history. It would not be just the Chinese that would feel the pain of the coming years. Indeed, the entire world would suffer alongside them. From the Pacific Ocean all the way to Europe, nearly all the lands of civilization would come to know the name Genghis Khan. The man who would set the world ablaze had just been born. Temujin was estimated to be born in the year 1162, but then again, nobody really knows. Like most of the events of his early life, we have spotty records, at best. Some place his birth year in the Chinese year of the pig, which would be either year 1155 or 1167. Years later, Temujin's father, the leader of their tribe, was murdered by poison by his rivals. Both Temujin and his older brother were considered too young to rule, and thus they were passed over in favor of a rival family. Reduced to poverty, Temujin and his half-brother began to feud, as both sought to control their household and lay claim to their birthright as head of their family. The tension between the two grew until Temujin, allied with a younger brother, killed his older brother in an ambush and assumed the mantle of head of his household, a sign of the brutal resolve that he would show throughout his own life. Around this time, Temujin met Jamuka, and the two allies and friends became sworn blood brothers. Taken prisoner multiple times in his early life, Temujin would deal with betrayal and intrigue as he grew into a man on the forbidding steppe lands. At age 15, he was considered a man, and thus he rode to claim his betrothed wife from another clan which had been arranged by his father years prior to his death. He married Borte at 16, allowing himself with Togru, a powerful Khan who had been an ally of his father. He grew close to the mighty war chief. During a raid on his camp, Borte was abducted by the Merkets and taken prisoner. She was then given in marriage to one of their tribe, as was their custom. With Togrul and Jamuka's aid, Temujin launched an attack, reclaiming his now very pregnant wife. Soon after, she would give birth to Jochi, and for the rest of his life, Jochi would live under the shadow of his legitimacy, despite Temujin's insistence and support to the contrary, and his challenge to any who would question his decision on the matter. Then taken captive himself and enslaved by the Taichuts, Temujin executed a daring escape from captivity, swearing vengeance against his captors forever. The great warlord then set his sights on uniting the divided tribes of the steppe, one by one bringing them together year after year, and for that period of time, Temujin and Jamuka would ride together, until mounting tensions between the two men drove them apart. Eventually, with a huge force of 20,000 battle-hardened warriors at his command, Temujin waged war against the Tartars, the people responsible for the death of his father, crushing them entirely. Then, having every male whose head stood taller than a wagon axle executed, he absorbed the surviving Tartars into his own tribe. Then turning his attention to the Taichuts, Temujin had every single one of their leaders boiled alive after defeating them, cementing his power across the steppe. As the years passed, one by one the tribes of the steppe fell, or they swore their loyalty to Temujin. Even Jamuka, his blood brother, would eventually meet his end. First, however, the men who betrayed Jamuka to Temujin were executed for their disloyalty, before Jamuka himself met his end. With the last of the resistance destroyed, Temujin had done something few men in history had ever accomplished. He had united the peoples of the steppe together into one of the most powerful forces in human history. In 1206, Temujin held a Kurultai, or a large assembly of the tribes. Here he was elevated to the position of Chinggis, or Genghis Khan. Khan being emperor or ruler, and Genghis being either universal or celestial. The universal ruler of all those who dwelt under the felt tent was now ready to turn his attention beyond Mongolia and to the south, towards China. The Mongols began raiding the frontier cities of the Chinese Western Xia Kingdom shortly after, with the majority of their forces positioned to the east and the south to defend against the Jurchen Jin Empire to the east and the Song Empire to the south. The Western Xia had come to depend on the vast Gobi Desert to the north to defend them. After raids and sacking forts along the northern border, Temujin led a full-scale invasion of the Xia in 1209. Marching in on the Xia capital, the Mongols, using the most effective strategy of all, the classic feigned retreat, drew out the Xia army and crushed them. With no siege equipment, however, the Khan attempted to divert the Yellow River to flood out their capital city, but instead ended up flooding his own camp, bringing a swift end to his campaign. The Xia Emperor submitted to the Khan's authority, giving both tribute to the Mongol warlord and his daughter to secure peace. In the year 1211, Genghis turned his attention to the much more formidable Jurchen-controlled northern Jin Empire of China. Weiyang Yongji had usurped the throne 2 years prior, and Temujin had served with him on the steppe. The great Khan hated Yongji. The Jin, demanding tribute from the Khan, were instead met with mocking comments, spit, and a declaration of war by Genghis personally. Vastly outnumbered and outmatched, the Mongols rolled south to confront the Jin Emperor and his army. Knowing that the empire was already weak internally, Genghis believed that a swift and powerful invasion could lead to a collapse of the empire from within. Armed with one of the best spy networks on the planet, the Khan depended on his eyes and ears, which he had planted deep within the kingdoms of his enemies for years. It was now that these trees began to bear fruit. Allowed to pass into the kingdom unopposed by disloyal border troops, the Mongols descended into the empire with 3 prongs. Towns defected, armies deserted, and the Mongols swept aside all that opposed them with a lightning campaign. During the siege of one city, the Khan was struck with an arrow and wounded, causing the campaign to grind to a halt. Still struggling with siege warfare, the Khan was forced to pull back and plan once more for the coming year. In the year 1213, after training a corps of engineers and bolstered with defecting Jin experts, he resumed his attack. Much more prepared, the Jin had reinforced their fortresses at Jiong Pass, and their most elite troops were stationed there. The great general Jebe was able to overcome them, catching the defenders unprepared and routing them, leaving the road to the mighty capital of Zhengdu, or modern-day Beijing, open. The empire began to crumble from within, most of the leadership seeing the coming end. Internal rebellions erupted as the Jin stranglehold loosened. Setting up a siege of the city, the Mongolian army sent fear rippling throughout the city of almost 1 million people. Yongji was deposed, and his general replaced him with a puppet, who sought peace with the Mongols immediately. Genghis was blessed by this turn of events, as plague and starvation had erupted within his own army during the failed siege. Simply put, the Khan had overextended his forces badly and needed time to regroup. With peace secured and a vast horde of tribute, his forces declared victory and headed home. The new emperor then moved his capital of the empire south to Kaifeng, likely due to plague and famine in the northern part of the realm. Genghis saw this as a violation of the peace, believing that the new emperor had sought to strengthen his own position further south for future hostilities. Resolved now to conquer the Jin entirely, he marshaled his forces once more, marching back to Zhengdu. The city surrendered. The Mongols sacked the city on June 1st, 1215, in one of the most monumental events in world history. For a month, the great city was ravaged, and an uncounted death toll was brought forth. Some estimates range from the low tens of thousands to as high as nearly 1 million dead. Nobody will ever know. Leaving a general in command to continue to prosecute the campaign, Genghis returned to Mongolia. In 1219, after his ambassadors were killed in the west by the court of the Khwarezmian Empire, an outraged Khan prepared to respond to this insult. Leaving a small force in China to continue his conquest, he turned the might of his empire fully westward. Muhammad II was a powerful ruler in his own right, and was unconcerned with the savage lands of the east. Confident in his power and prestige, he had no idea of the horrors that he had just unleashed upon his people. In only 3 short years, the powerful Khwarezmian Empire was brought low. Great cities such as Bukhara and Samarkand fell with lightning speed to the Mongols. Using his highly effective sons and generals, the Khan was able to strike multiple cities at the same time, causing chaos within the crumbling realm. Jebei and Subutai pursued Muhammad until his death on the Caspian Sea, sealing his defeat and the full conquest of his empire into the Khan's realm. Called to fight alongside his master, the Emperor of the Western Shah had failed to send support as had been requested, infuriating the Khan. Heading back east, the eyes of Genghis fell onto those who had betrayed him. He spent a year preparing for the coming war in the south, bent on wiping out the Shah from the face of the earth. City by city, they fell to the sword, with a chilling and ruthless campaign that saw the Shah die in unbelievable numbers. Leaving his generals to finish off the Shah, Genghis headed east towards the Jin to continue that conquest from there. However, falling off his horse, the Khan grew ill. Urged to return home, he refused, continuing to oversee his campaigns until his death in that year of 1227. Most empires of conquest do not survive their initial conqueror. One need only look at the massive empire of Alexander the Great that crumbled on his deathbed. With the Mongols, however, it would be completely different. The sons and the grandson of Genghis Khan, or Temujin, would continue his conquests and campaigns. Year after year, long after his death, the great warlord's memory endured, and the Mongolian war machine would continue to march. Only a month after Genghis Khan's death, the capital of Zhongjing, seat of the Western Shah, fell. Temujin had left orders to leave nothing, to wipe them out completely for their betrayal. From the grave, Genghis Khan had had his final revenge. His body was then sent to Mongolia and buried in secret, one still kept to this day. On the next episode, the Khans will continue their conquest of the world with their new emperor, Temujin's son, Ogadai. Well, if you made it to the end of the video, I hope you enjoyed the whole thing. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below. Also, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, the usual suspects. Anything that you can do to help the channel grow, and hopefully we can continue to pump out more videos in the future. Also, the social media links are down below. Follow us for any updates on future content, and thanks for watching.